Electric Z presents The Pursuit. Hey, it's Amanda Dagley, and I'd like to introduce you to my new series, The Pursuit. The Pursuit is intended to preserve stories of growing up as a Gen Xer in pursuit of culture in barren small-town spaces and the adventures of that pursuit. A time when access to big-name concerts, cool record stores, and thriving local scenes simply wasn't an option. The Pursuit is for the kids who thumbed through the cutout bins in Woolworths and rode away for t-shirt catalogs. It's for the kids who were ravenous for anything that was different, but still had to rely on MTV. The liner note reading kids who then dug deeper into the things that inspired the culture we found, and dug deeper still. It's for the kids who went to the library to research the words and history they didn't know in their favorite songs. I'd like to personally thank Iron Maiden for expanding my horizons. I know what it's like firsthand to scavenge for any shred of culture when you're isolated and far from any city. I grew up in the hamlet of Osable Forks in northern New York in the 1990s. Population 666 in 2000. Music was everything for me back then. Music was an escape, and it still is, I suppose. It's safe to say that I was the weird kid in my school, choosing to wear secondhand clothes with a penchant for menswear and Doc Martens, my Walkman seemingly permanently attached to my head. Being the only weird kid in a small school wasn't easy, though. I often had to defend myself, sometimes physically, from my peers, for both my style and music choices. If my school was small, my hometown was smaller, and the nearest city with any sort of shopping or entertainment was 30 minutes away by car, and I didn't drive. Instead, I relied on MTV and rock magazines to feed my constant hunger for more music, different music, anything. Inspiration came from everywhere, honestly. From the stacks of random records my dad would buy when he was out picking antiques for the shop he and my mom ran, to taping songs at the ends of albums I would dub from my friends. Every inch of tape was precious. I heard my first 2 Dead Kennedy songs this way, after borrowing a mix from a friend, which included her friend's dubbed DK 7-inches. By the time these songs were taped by me on a very cheap blank cassette from H.L. Green at the end of the Misfits' Walk Among Us, they sounded like mud. How punk rock. How perfect. I did spend time with friends, but I also spent a lot of time alone, on foot, exploring the riverbanks and the abandoned paper mill near my house, listening to my Walkman and directing music videos in my head for the songs I was listening to through those itchy and flimsy foam-covered headphones. You know the ones I'm talking about. When putting together the concept for this new series, I decided my teenage exposure to Mr. Bungle would be the perfect way to kick things off. Because you see, Mr. Bungle became a cultural lifeline in that abandoned paper mill wasteland of my youth. They were the first band that inspired me to explore what inspired them. The first Bungle album was the secret soundtrack for this teenage misfit, and it wasn't until I was an older teen that I even heard about another couple fans in my area. In June of '92, I was 15 years old and anxiously awaiting the release of Angel Dust by Faith No More, being teased by clips of Midlife Crisis on MTV. Unfortunately, money was tight and trips to the big city not an everyday thing. But at some point, money and time collided, and I was finally able to get my mom to bring me all the way from Osable Forks, New York to Plattsburgh, New York, to buy the album at Record Town in the new mall. I say that with purpose, because if you're from the Plattsburgh area, you know exactly what I mean. While I was at Record Town, I noticed they actually had in stock the debut studio album by Mr. Bungle, Mike Patton's first band before joining Faith No More. Flush with good grade money from 9th grade, I bought Mr. Bungle as well, because at that point, I was a rabid Faith No More fan, and I already owned the first 2 Faith No More albums. The album Mr. Bungle came out a year prior, but it wasn't something that would have often been in stock at the corporate record store in the mall in our small city. Fortunately, there were always cool people working there, and I think they were often responsible for the cool things in stock. Long live Record Town in both the new and old mall. Even with the at times eclectic stock at this record store, I was really surprised to find Mr. Bungle there among the cassettes. I was a musically curious kid, wondering about this mysterious other Patton project, something I only really knew from the Mr. Bungle t-shirt Patton wears in the Epic video and the music press that action got in the rock mags of the day. I guess I can't claim OG fan status because of this, but I think a lot of kids my age discovered Mr. Bungle through MTV playing Epic repeatedly over the summer of 1990. However, not all the people who decided to check out Bungle as a result stuck around, but the ones who did are diehard, and I count myself among them. As a 48-year-old now, I can say that Patton wearing that t-shirt in the video was one of the most punk rock things I have ever seen, and I think that is something to be applauded. I listened to both Mr. Bungle and Angel Dust that summer, but I found myself spending more time with Bungle in my Walkman as the summer turned to autumn. Wandering through town in my own world, I imagined how amazing Eureka, California must be if it spawned music like this. In my mind's eye, Eureka was a magical, mythical place to teenage me. Up until that point, I saw California through a lens of the Monkees, Camper Van Beethoven, and Skate or Die on NES. Eager to learn more about this place, naturally, I went to the library around the corner from my house and looked up Eureka, California in the encyclopedia. Eureka, California is way bigger than Osable Forks, New York, but this album gave me the feeling that when you're considered the weird kid, it doesn't really matter the size or location of your high school. Kids can be so cruel, sings Patton on Dead Goon. Kids, and even a teacher or two, were cruel to me. I always felt like an outcast for a variety of reasons, even though I had a small group of friends. That's why the songs on Mr. Bungle were exactly what I needed to feel musically buoyant while drowning in a sea of normal kids. Creepy and funny, perverted, and sometimes juvenile, but with messages of angst, loneliness, and despair, all the things I was feeling as a weirdo teenager. It was like they really understood what I was going through, and whether I knew it or not at the time, they showed me through this album that it was okay to be a weirdo too. When I would listen to this album, it was like I was given a peep show view of subjects and situations I could never experience or access in my small town. As embarrassing as it is to express, The Girls of Porn is partly responsible for my exploration of pornography as a teenager. I'd also like to blame finding random porno mags in the woods, which I think is a universal Gen X experience that I'd like to discuss in a future show, but I digress. My interest in clowns also has ties to Mr. Bungle thanks to Carousel, but I'd have to say it's a 50-50 split with seeing the Stephen King's It miniseries on ABC in 1990. Both very formative to my development. Mr. Bungle is such a nuanced and layered album. Each time I listened, I seemed to find something new hiding in the background. There's no dead air between songs, and this audio tapestry hypnotized me, until of course I had to flip the tape to the other side to start all over again. As a kid who was forever obsessed with taping and preserving things from as far back as I can remember, these sounds were simply fascinating. Jumping trains and arcade sounds. The DIY of this incidental ambiance excited and inspired me, and continues to, some 34 years later. I learned a lot about myself through that first Mr. Bungle album. I pored over the liner notes, which was difficult on the cassette tape because the writing was so small. And I saw out things that I didn't recognize or know. I'd already seen the film Parents, but I can give credit to Bungle for the inspiration to watch Blue Velvet. I figured if Bungle thought it was cool, and it inspired them, then I wanted to know more about it too. Shortly after I bought the tape, I wrote a letter to the management company address in the liner notes. I asked what was on the back of the tractor t-shirt Patton was wearing in that video, and said some other awkward complimentary things, I'm sure. I was a hopeful 15-year-old, and I sure hoped they would send something back. One of my duties growing up was to get the mail at the post office around the corner from my house. When school was in session, I would get off the bus at Feek's Pharmacy and get the mail. But this particular summer, I was always eager to check the mail, hoping for an envelope from Kristen Yee management, sometimes going to the post office twice a day. I remember it being a hot and hazy day the day an envelope arrived. I had kind of given up hope. So to see this big white envelope all the way from San Francisco, California, I just about dropped dead in the lobby of the Osable Forks post office. I opened it up, and there was a nicely typed note from Ms. Yee answering all my questions. There's a B on the back of the shirt, in case you were wondering. She also enclosed an 8x10 black and white photo of Mr. Bungle, all signed in black ink, except for Patton's bold Vlad in black Sharpie across his face. Looking back, this was one of the kindest things that has ever happened to me through all my years of being a music fan. I appreciate the time taken just to send this young weirdo some pretty awesome mail. I've been fortunate to catch Bungle live in 1999 for the California album tour and in 2023 for the Raging Wrath of the Easter Bunny tour. I have also been fortunate over the years to see many of the bands in the Bungle sphere and all of the tentacles that writhe from within it, and I plan on continuing to do so for as long as I physically can. I'm not sure if I've managed to fully articulate how the album Mr. Bungle changed my life, but it did. It led me into the unknown and unexplored, a coming-of-age album for this high school weirdo. Thank you, Mr. Bungle. Thank you for encouraging my pursuit. I've always wanted to be like Mr. Bungle.